Sysman Motloung is a political science lecturer at the Northwest University and joins us via Zoom for a little bit more on this story. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. I just wonder if, we talk about cadre deployment, if we aren't actually arguing about semantics, because even if there isn't a meeting behind closed doors and people are ticking off names, surely the parties will always put their people forward by any means necessary.
Yeah, definitely, Peter. This is what is going to happen. Just because a particular appointment is not minuted does not mean there has been a caucus as to who the preferred candidate would be. And as you correctly say, every political party has a vested interest as to who occupies a particular strategic position in state institutions. This is very pertinent for political parties to deliver on their electoral mandate. This is now a very complicated debate and argument that has to be settled before a court, but I don't think it will really hold as part of the cultural practices of our political parties.
What can the courts do? I mean, they say you can't have cadre deployment, but how do you enforce that?
Yeah, this will be hard to enforce, like we're saying. Officially, a particular political party will say we don't have a deployment policy. But indeed, they are actually deploying by the virtue of having a political party list. That is a list to deploy their officials or members into parliament, and from parliament to deploy into ministries and then strategic institutions like your state enterprises. Now, the court could argue on the basis of saying to prefer somebody who's not qualified over one who's qualified for partisan reasons is not legal. Maybe in terms of labor practices, this is discrimination on an element of maybe belonging. But it will be very hard to police because we know even currently in certain companies, there's already caucuses when people apply. I think you've heard in society, there's that comment of saying, we are submitting our CVs, but we already know there's a preferred candidate who's already earmarked for a particular position. So these issues of nepotism that are spoken of in private sectors, you can call cadre deployment policy as a particular nepotist policy of a political party.
But the ANC has spoken quite clearly that they're talking about professionalizing their governance, and so that the cadre deployment policy will be re-looked at. And they've admitted that it sometimes has contributed to corruption. Are we to take them at their word? Do you think that that there's genuinely a new broom that's being used to sweep and clean?
These are old conversations in public administration. It's not a recent thing. If you also converse with people in municipalities, over the past 5-10 years, there's been people who don't have degrees going to universities to go study, to acquire those qualifications, because municipalities are now asking for qualifications. Or previously, you had to be a very active member at a community, and then you'll be deployed in a particular department at the municipality. But now the call is for professionalizing. Say you professionalize and you say there's a particular principle now saying no employment if you don't have a degree, a basic degree. That does not negate or take away the likelihood of corrupt tendencies, because you can still have a master's and a PhD holder and employed in a municipality, and those people will misuse state resources. So this is a matter of virtue out of our public officials, how virtuous they are, and if as society we uphold certain principles of honesty and diligence. If not, it doesn't matter who comes in, whatever qualification they have. You cannot stop corruption without strong systems within.
I suppose, though, the voters have been speaking quite loudly, and this is probably going to force the ANC's hand, and any political party actually, to make sure that they put people in place that will perform, because the voters are not afraid to kick them out, it seems.
Yeah, if you say they put people in place, is it deploying, or is it
Yes.
a very neutral recruitment of people who are qualified? And if it's a neutral, then a job application or a job description should say you should not belong to a particular political party. And when you are being vetted, you should prove that you don't belong to a political party. Then whether you are DA, EFF, ANC, it means now people who want to serve in public sector should not belong to political parties. That way we're trying to say they have no persuasion of a political party. This is really, I think for me, the DA is doing this somehow to enforce the Zondo Commission recommendation, but also to appear as being relevant at this moment. But this kind of an activism and a particular goal they want to achieve, I don't think it will really serve their interests. Maybe they want to block doors like in state enterprises, but it will be a hard battle for them to hold away people who already belong to political parties. Because we will also come to that point, we say, do not belong to a political party. It's a constitutional issue again, that if I have to be employed, my constitutional right of association has been taken away. This is a very complicated drive for me. No, we're doing it for politics, but I don't think it's practical.
The DA is taking the ANC to court, essentially, over cadre deployment, but hasn't the Democratic Alliance done the very same thing in the provinces and the municipalities that it runs?
Yes, this is every political party, as we began saying, when a political party comes to power, it brings its human resources, its intellectuals to come in to inform policy and practitioners to implement that policy. We have to now go to every political party where they are governing to ask as to at that strategic level, who does not belong to a political party, who is not a DA member in the Western Cape, at that senior management level. We also have had previously, there have been people with mere matric, employed by the DA at a very senior management. That is cadre deployment. So if you are going to paint another party blue, then you also have to apply the same paint on yourself. This, if the court rules on it, is not only something that applies to the ANC only, it should apply to all political parties.
I know that cadre deployment now has a very negative connotation given some of the things that have played out, but if we suppose for a moment that those people that are deployed by the party are competent and professional, is there anything wrong with it? Because you want people that you can trust to do the work.
Peter, I do not think there would be anything wrong. One of the arguments that maybe necessitate the DA to take this court action is what Zondo Commission picked up when there's a likelihood of capture. And this is a philosophical argument to some extent. When you say a political party wins power, does it not capture the state? Because that political party that controls the state is capturing the state for its political issues. Then we come to municipalities, especially, where we see a collapse of services. This is another motivation, maybe from the DA, that people who make decisions at the municipality might not be competent enough for those decisions. Then the other part, I think it somehow links to that element of BEE. Maybe now there's certain people, let's say white, people who are white, who wanted to take certain senior positions, and they don't have those opportunities because black people are being preferred. And this is within that understanding of a cadre deployment. Now we have to really page through these contentions to understand really what the issues are. And for me, maybe these three aspects could be among the key elements.
All right, perhaps a final question. I look to countries like the United Kingdom where they have positions like permanent secretaries. And the idea is to have someone who's almost like a CEO of a ministry who stays in that job despite the political parties that go in and out so that there's continuity and consistency. Do you think we ought to be thinking along those lines?
That thought is already permeating in our public sector. If you listen to SALGA, SALGA has already been talking about municipal managers, that a municipal manager tenure should not be 5 years, give them 10 years, give them 15 years for consistency. And at the department level, you see a director general who might be beholden to a minister. There has to be security. I think in our system, we already have senior managers, your directors in departments. Those are people who have an institutional memory. And if you really go to analyze a department and take a department of health, for an example, ministers are changing, but senior management are permanent. And these are senior management who induct the political office bearers to understand what is happening and to understand from a political principle point of view, what are the priorities, and they link them to the normal operations of a department. That is happening already from side of SALGA. We will see how far it goes, and if at all it will help to stabilize municipalities, because we understand municipal managers don't have that consistency after 5 years of a new one. So indeed, there is that instability at the local government.
All right, Mr. Motloung, we shall be watching this court case with interest, and we'll see what happens post that. But thanks for your thoughts and analysis this evening.